Using the James et al. 2020 data, we want to answer the following research question. To what extent does the reading comprehension raw score differ between boys and girls? What inferential statistic will we use? Well, we know from our data set that boys and girls constitute separate groups that don't overlap. And so we lean towards an independent samples t-test. Where you find this in jamovi is under analyses, t-tests, independent samples t-test. You're going to use gender as your grouping variable because we're interested in the difference between boys and girls. And our raw score for comprehension is called YARC-COMP-AB. Before we continue with the t-test, we know that we must check the assumptions of the test to see if it's an appropriate statistic to use. We have met one of the assumptions, which is the independence of observations, because boys and girls are in separate groups. And the next assumption is that the data should be normally distributed in each group. So jamovi gives us the option within the t-test pane to check for normality using the Shapiro-Wilk test, which will give you a numerical output, and a QQ plot, which is a graphical display. The Shapiro-Wilk test tells us that it significantly differs from a normal distribution. And if we look at the QQ plot, we see that it's quite different at the tail ends. But let's just say that we're happy with this level of non-normality, and using standardized scores doesn't help. So let's continue. The next thing we must check is equality of variances. So is the variance the same in each group? We can use Levine's test to show us whether there is homoscedasticity in the groups. And we see that yes, this test has returned greater than 0.05. So we see that the equality of variance is not violated. This means that we can use a student t-test. However, if this p-value was less than 0.05, we would have used a Welch test, which you can specify here on the left. We're going to leave it selected just to see how the results may differ. Our null hypothesis is that boys and girls do not perform differently on the comprehension test. So we'll leave this set as the default level. Under additional statistics, we'd want to see what the mean difference is, and then we click on effect size to determine if it's a meaningful difference, and then it's always good practice to include the confidence interval. If you want the plot that I've generated in your course syllabus, you'll click on descriptive plots. And if you want to see the raw values, you can click on descriptives. Let's look at our output. Remember the variance was the same, so we'll look at the student's t-test output. We can see that p is 0.432, which is greater than alpha of 0.05. And so this test is telling us that there's no statistically significant difference between boys and girls on the comprehension raw score. Although our mean difference is 0.879, if we look at our 95% confidence interval, we can see that our band ranges from the one group getting 3 lower to the one group getting more than 1 more than the other group. Because this overlaps with 0, it's more evidence that there's no significant difference between the groups. Then we return to our effect size, Cohen's d, and we see that it's very small, 0.08 if we round it up. So we can see that it's not statistically significantly different, or the groups do not differ from one another, and also that any difference that is there by chance is not very meaningful.